Welcome to Chapter 3, Manufacturing Specifications of the Subaru lineartronic Generation 1 CVT transmission. In this chapter, you'll learn torque specs, special tools needed, gear ratios, end plate clearances, clutch clearances, fluid type, oil fill amount, and pressure testing information. My name is Jared Warren. I'll be your host for this course. It's a great day to fix transmissions, so let's get started. Subaru does not list all of the torque specifications. Using your best judgment is required. Some of the most common torque specifications that you will see are the pan bolts, 44 inch-pounds, filter tube valve body bolts, 80 inch-pounds, valve body to case bolts, 80 inch-pounds. You also see the main case bolts, 30 foot-pounds. And a lot of these bolts and nuts are listed. The pulley nuts, those are ones that Subaru did not list. We got those down at 200 foot-pounds. That's what we used on a core, and the nut just started moving around 200 foot-pounds. So here's some more pressure tap torque specs, and also trans fill plug, differential fill plug torque specs here on this list here. This list will be mainly for installing the transmissions. Transmission fill plug is 18.4 foot-pounds. Differential fill plug is the same, 18.4. Drain plug is 51.6 foot-pounds. It's a pretty big size plug. When changing the flex plate, Subaru wants you to torque the flex plate bolts to 7.4 foot-pounds, then finish torquing them to 29.5 foot-pounds. The list for factory tools is quite long for this transmission. Not all of them here are listed. The good news is that very few of them are needed. The most important tools would be the Torx bit T70, E16, E20, 3/8 drive 12.27 millimeter socket for the secondary pressure sensor. The Posi-Lock puller is a good puller to remove the chains from the pulleys. A good thing about the Posi-Lock puller is you can use it on a lot of different CVT transmissions. For the most part, that's the most common puller that I've used on all the CVTs I've worked on. Part number for the Posi-Lock puller, you can find it online. You can find it on Napa. Some of your transmission suppliers have it. TJ1 is the part number. They have some stopper pin pullers for like the inhibitor switch. Part numbers are there for you. The pressure gauges and adapters and oil pressure adapters, pressure gauges, all this stuff here is pretty important to have, or you can make stuff with a transducer and some pressure fittings. That's what I would recommend instead of the factory tools personally. The transducer is the safest way to go. Again, we have the ratios for you. We talked about this in an earlier chapter. Reverse is 2.358 to 1. Drive is 3.525 to 0.558 to 1. Also, you have your manual shift modes here. Each ratio for each shift when you're using the tap up and down function. On the next few slides, there's going to be a bunch of different part numbers for the selected shins and their sizes. These charts will be in your handout for future use. The transfer reduction gear is on the extension housing and drives the output shaft. The output shaft thrust vary between the transfer clutch drum and the output shaft hub, what I would call the input shaft. Subaru calls it the drive reduction gear shaft. Another strange name, Subaru uses the drive reduction gear, I would call the input clutch drum assembly. We'll talk and show you how to measure these end plate checks in the rebuild section here. So for your transfer reduction gear, we're looking at 0.002 to 0.01. Then we have some different output thrust bearing clearance here, 0.02 thousandths, 0.002 and 0.001. Input drive reduction shaft, 0.003 to 0.006. And then the driven reduction, 0.002 to 0.006. Here's your shim numbers and thicknesses for selecting the correct, getting the correct in play. Now we're at the front of the transmission. This is your input front reduction drive shaft shims and the driven reduction shims. Clutch clearances, and the selective part numbers are here. So the reverse clutch clearance is 0.113 to 0.125. So reverse clutch isn't used only in reversed, so they have it fairly loose here, so it's not dragging. Your forward clutch is 47 to 63 thousandths, and it looks like it has adjustable pressure plates. The input clutch clearance, the input clutch is always on, so we're looking at 0.094 to 0.11. The pressure plate here is also selective, and your transfer clutch clearance is 28 to 43 thousandths, so 0.028 to 0.043. The pressure plate is also selective in the transfer case clutch. Here's your fluid levels and amounts again. Subaru CVT F fluid. Dry fill is 11.9 to 12.5 quarts. During your service, you're at 5 to 7 quarts. For the differential, you're looking at GL5 7590, 1.4 to 1.5 quarts. When testing secondary pressure, you need a gauge and a hose that is rated at least 1000 psi. I would recommend the transducer for safety reasons. I have found it easy to find the fittings needed at hardware stores, Grainger Online, those kind of places. Here are all the factory part numbers for your pressure tools. Here is the location of the pressure tap. The secondary pressure tap is on the passenger side. So what we would basically do is we're going to start the vehicle up. We're going to put it in neutral. Neutral and park, you're looking at 72 to 218 psi. When you're in drive and reverse at stall, you're looking at 852 to 870 psi. The cooler return is the bottom line. Transfer case clutch tap is here in the middle of the transmission, middle extension housing. In park or neutral, we're looking at 0 psi on the transfer case clutch tap. Put it in manual second and idle, you're going to have low psi, roughly 0 psi. When the solenoid's at duty, 0% duty cycle. Give it about 60% throttle. Duty cycle is going to go up to roughly 60. And your transmission transfer case clutch pressure should be 58 to 102. When max throttle, it's going to go up to 100% TPS and 100% duty cycle on your solenoid. You should be at 145 to 174 psi. This will conclude our chapter for the manufacturer specifications on the Subaru lineartronic Generation 1 transmission. We want to thank you for participating in our virtual training solutions powered by ATRA. Until next time, let's keep fixing transmissions together.